Okay, so now I'm going to show you how to transform these pieces that we spent some time measuring, marking and cutting out into one of these. So this is a finished assembly for either the top or the bottom of the clock. You can see that it's got a slot in here for the clear plastic part and your piece of paper for your design, and it's exactly the same for the piece at the top. Okay, so this is why we cut ourselves two little pieces for here and here, just like shown with these two. So the skills that we're focusing on when doing this exercise are gluing and pinning. So we're going to be gluing and pinning this together and learn about the correct techniques for doing that. So I'm just going to do a little trial run, a practice, to show you how it's going to go together. That's going to go there. These two pieces are going to go here. And then this piece here is going like that. Now, with these strips that were called part 2, the shape there on the end is not quite a square, it's a rectangle. So it's slightly wider that way, it's slightly smaller that way. So I'm going to put it with the wider side of the wood facing down. So there's the wide side of the square or the rectangle. That's going to get placed down like that. So it's slightly wider that way compared to the height of the material off the table. It would be not a big problem, but it would make it more difficult later if we glued one of these down in a slightly different way. You would see that that part there is a bit wider, that part there is a bit narrower, so it wouldn't be symmetrical, and we'd have to plane or smooth this part down for quite a long time until the two surfaces actually merged. So it's going to go that way. Okay, so we'll now take you through the pinning and gluing. So I'm just going to move these apart in preparation for that. I'm going to use PVA glue. So I know that some of you like to put this onto paper towels or to use little brushes. Because it's water based, it's perfectly acceptable just to use your finger and to use it straight at the bottom. So I'm going to run a thin line along there for where the first piece is going to go. And then I'm going to put this part 2 down on top and just keep moving it about until I can see the glue oozing out the side there. I can see the glue basically streaming out like that. So that means that 100% of the surface area is now going to be joined with glue. It will still move about, and that's why we're going to later pin it together. I've already got a bit in my finger, but because it's water based and I can wash it simply with water, then it's not a problem. There's no point in wasting brushes doing this. So now what I'm going to do is pin this in place. I want the two edges here, or the two faces here, to be what's called flush, where this face here lines up with this face there. So I'm going to make like almost a little bridge. I'm going to use this piece here, and I'm going to just do that. Or for the purpose of the camera, I'm going to turn it this way. So just to make it doubly clear, this is not glued. This is not glued in place yet. This is just acting as a support. Okay, and I've got a gap in there. I could actually come and press that piece in there in the gap. I'm not interested in that gap yet. I'm just interested in the front surface of that lining up with the front surface of my wood there. Okay, and now we're going to pin this in place. So the whole time I've been talking about this, I haven't mentioned the word nail because that's not what we're using. We're using what's called panel pins. So for finer carpentry, we're not talking joinery, we're talking finer work. We use something called panel pins. A joiner, if they were making a staircase or a doorway or something like that, they would use nails and they would be calling it what they were doing, nailing. But because we are making something fine and intricate, it's more like carpentry, so it's a finer type of woodwork. So we use panel pins. So you can use panel pins like this to hold it together, and I'm going to basically put two panel pins, one here and one here, to hold this part that's currently just basically lightly held with glue, held in place permanently now. We're going to just tap this in to begin with. If you find you're constantly hitting your fingers, you can use needle nose pliers. I'm going to stop there because I'm not happy where that panel pin's gone. I'm going to move it back maybe about 2 or 3 millimetres. I don't want it right on the edge because there's a slight danger that it might split the wood. Now that it's tapped in place, I'm just going to check that my piece of wood hasn't moved. So my strip underneath hasn't moved yet. I've got the panel pin going through the top layer, and I can now strike it a little bit harder with my hand right out on the bottom of the hammer a nice swinging action, but I'm not taking it back over my shoulder or anything ridiculous like that, and I'm just tapping it in. If you hit the panel pin, or if you're working with nails, if you hit them too hard they will bend, and that's why you get nails that bend and look crooked, and we definitely don't want that, because this might be the top of the clock, or it might be the bottom of the clock, and it might not sit properly on the table. I'm now going to position this one just about the same position as I have this one, but on the opposite end. Tap it to begin with. Yeah, I'm hitting my fingers a tiny bit, but it's not sore. It's now penetrated the first layer of timber, and I can now tap it with a little bit more force into the second layer of timber. So that is now glued and pinned in place. Right, I'm now going to do the securing of these pieces. So this is going to get secured in there, and that's going to get secured in there. So this gets done in a slightly different way. There's no actual pins that hold these in place. I'm going to put a spot more glue there, and I'm going to run some on the base there. And I'm going to put these down in place, and I'm going to move them about so that the glue spreads on every bit possible. Okay, and the same there. And now I've just got to put this in place. So I've got to do the same thing again. Now you could run glue along there. You could run glue along there, but because this has not got any glue on it already, it's a lot cleaner to work with than just to put glue on the wide surface there. And then thinking about where it's going to go, put a little 40mm run there, a little 40mm run there, and now I can place that in there. So I'm now trying to close the gaps. I'm also making sure that this here doesn't move about too much. I mean, that will slide about quite easily. I've got to make sure that it doesn't actually get any closer together than it is now, or else there's a danger that this piece of plastic won't fit. So make sure that there's a minimum size here, either with a bit of plastic or just with a steel rule, and check that that is no smaller than 120mm. So this would probably be secure enough to put in a vise and leave, but just for extra security I'm going to show you how to put another pair of panel pins in. Actually, you don't have to do this. If you make this assembly up and it looks like you've got here and the glue is oozing out every single surface, like you can see I'm just getting that there, it's probably good to go. You could leave it lightly in a vase overnight for the PVA glue to dry, but I think for extra security I'm going to put some additional panel pins in. It can go wrong at this point because of this piece sticking out. Let me just turn this round. I'm going to just sit it forward, rocking forward onto that piece of material. You could also do it along an edge like that where the table sinks down a level. I think I'm going to do that, and I'm going to put the panel pin on there now. I'm going to tap it in. Just strike it and drive it home. So I think that's now secure. Just check if anything's moved. It's not. It looks pretty good. I'm going to do the exact same thing again there. So just with this part hanging off the little bit of the table where it sinks down, I can drive in another panel pin without the whole thing wobbling back and forward or knocking any bits of timber out that I don't want. Okay. The final thing to note about this is it's very messy. My fingers are very messy. They're all covered in glue now. It's water based at the end of the day, so you just need to take a trip to the sink to wash your hands, but you don't want to be running your bit of wood under the tap and washing it with water, because that's a bit too much water. Yes, you can wash it with water, but what you do is use a wet paper towel, and this is really essential. Probably the most essential thing about this clock. We want it to be the most beautiful product possible, so we don't want stains of glue all over it. Any glue on the surface, when you paint over it later, will stick out very obviously indeed. So use a wet paper towel to wipe away any extra glue sitting on the surface. This will have a secondary effect. It will basically water down the glue on the surface and make it pour back into the gaps in the joints, and it will seal the joints and it will make your gaps look smaller. So there's the second benefit for wiping down with a paper towel. It makes your gaps less visible. Okay, so there's that, all glued up, glued and pinned. So we used a hammer and we used a type of nail called a panel pin to glue and pin it together, and we did that using water-based PVA glue. So when that's dry, it'll end up looking like one of these. Okay, you can now, if your teacher's happy, put this in the vase to dry. Don't put it in the vase and tighten it up too much, because it might do more harm than good. If the teacher's not happy, it'll probably be because there's another class coming in. And if you've done your job properly with the pins and the glue, actually you don't need to stick it in a vase. What you must do though is put your name on it, because if there's something we left to dry, it's got to be left between 1 week and the next, and we don't want it going missing or being claimed by someone else. Okay? Do not ever put wet, glued parts into your folder. I think that's common sense. Right, well, thanks for watching and listening, and good luck doing that yourself. I'm sure you'll do really, really well if you follow these steps.